Welcome to Becoming Your Own BFF with host Randy Haveson. Let's agree that life gives us hurdles, but how often do we turn those hurdles into walls? Randy will give you strategies to break down the walls and clear the hurdles that are in your way. The goal of the show is to help you find happiness and joy at levels you didn't even know existed. Becoming Your Own BFF starts now.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back, and thank you for joining me today. I am so thrilled for today's episode. I'm bringing on Emily Golden, and the cool part is we've probably only talked like 4 or 5 times, but every time it's like we're connected in some way, and her work is so amazing, and I really believe in her and what she's doing and her message. And I thought she would make an amazing guest. Hello, Emily. Welcome.
Hello, Randy. Thanks for having me.
How long have we known each other?
I believe it's 5 years.
5 years?
I think
I was
we
going to
met
say
in
2.
2019.
Really?
Because, yep, I was writing a book. I was talking to you about the book writing process. So it's either 4 or 5 years, but I'm going to go with 5.
Okay. All right. I'll go with that. Yeah, it was right before you released your book, wasn't it? Wow.
Yeah.
And I remember you telling me about the book, and it just sounded so amazing. I love how our messages are so congruent with each other. And it's kind of like the same message with a little bit different frequency. And I love your message, and you're just such an awesome person. And I just wanted to bring you on and let people know who you are, talk a little bit about your evolution since that book. Definitely want to talk about the book, but where you are today, because I'm sure things are much different today than they were 5 years ago.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. And I agree. Our messages are so connected to one another. And I think the passion that we bring for the work that we do in the world is really aligned.
Yeah. And it's more important than it ever has been at this time in history.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So tell me about your book. I mean, I know, one of the other things I love about you is some people write a book, but some people, they are their book. And I remember you putting everything that is you into that book. Can you tell our audience here about your book and what went into it and what it's about now?
I want to just note that it sits on my shelf in between my 2 human babies. This is my book baby. And it is as important to me. Well, there's really nothing as important to me as my children, but this is right up there. It's like writing a book for me is really a legacy move. It's really part of the legacy that I intend to leave in this world. So my book is called The New Golden Rule. It's the professional perfectionist's guide to greater emotional intelligence, a more fulfilling career, and a better life. And the real deal is that I wrote this book because a former version of myself absolutely deeply needed to read this book.
Yeah.
I hit a point in 2015 where I was pretty much running on fumes. I had a successful career in human resources and 2 children, and I was stressed and anxious all the time. My children had various different special needs, and I was hustling for my worthiness like it was my job. And the thing is, in the corporate world, I was rewarded for that hustle.
Yeah.
And I'm someone who, I'm very open about this. I was on the couch in therapy at 9 because I had learning differences, and my mom was concerned about my self-esteem. So she put me in therapy, and I had done a lot of healing work. But when I found coaching in 2015, I actually had jumped into a transformational coach training program, not knowing if it would lead me to become a coach or just a year of transformation. But the unlock that occurred was I had this realization that the suffering I was experiencing was all of my own creation.
Yep.
And that it was the relationship with myself that was out, that needed work. And what the program taught me was how to fundamentally shift that relationship. And from there, everything else shifted. I mean, everything from leaving corporate, starting my own business, becoming a coach, being a voracious learner. I loved what I was learning around the coaching process, but also stepping into the highest and best version of myself, which had a book in her. And that was nothing predictable.
But isn't it amazing that the transformation happens when we take responsibility for where we're at and who we are? Mm-hmm. As if we're blaming the job, the spouse, the kids, the traffic, all those things, if all of these are outside of ourselves, nothing gets solved and we burn ourselves out. But when we take responsibility, I can turn this around.
It's the greatest form of power and empowerment that one can have. Yeah. And I remember when I first learned to take responsibility, I was doing a lot of ownership with judgment. I'm like, how could I have been so silly and wrong and right? And I had to get past that, because true responsibility is ownership without judgment. And from ownership, everything in our life is of our making and our doing. That doesn't mean that circumstantially there aren't things. I literally in my book talk about things. There are a lot of things. There's health issues. There's, issues with, that the kids have experienced, different traumas. Life. But all of it is just, it's life. It's life.
Yeah. And it's not what happens, but it's how we react to it that shifts. And I think you brought something up that I really think is vital. You asked for help. You didn't say, I can do this on my own. I think that's one of the biggest tragedies in our society today. We have this somehow thought that we have to suck it up and do it on our own. Mm-hmm. No, it's the asking for help that helps us to break through.
We are pack animals. I don't care if you're introverted or extroverted, whatever. Humans need humans to be their best. And one thing I will say is, my friends and my colleagues tell me this all the time. I have a very empowered relationship with support. And maybe part of it is I had learning differences. And so at an early age, I had tutors and different people who were supporting me to be the best version of myself. Mm-hmm. I think I took that early on as like, I almost needed to be fixed. I now have a very empowered relationship with it. And I would never be arrogant enough to think that I know how to do all the things well. I like to play in my zone of genius, which is coaching and supporting leaders to evoke the best talent within themselves and their teams. Awesome. My zone of genius is not in the business operations, right? I have to know how to run the business, but I also have to know how to hire the right people, how to have the right coaching support. And I'm a firm believer that when we are amply supported, the sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit. You know what? Tell me about this phrase, the zone of genius. Did you come up with that?
No, I did not.
Because I've never heard that before, but I love that.
Yeah. So shout out to The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. Okay. He coined the phrase, at least as far as I know, and it may go back even further, zone of genius. So I like to think of it like, and he talks about it, we have a zone of competence, things that we're good at, we can do. Zone of excellence, we're pretty good. We kind of have a differentiating factor around that. And then we have this zone of genius, which is the place where we get into that state of flow, that state of like, it's easy. We could do that all day. And it's really the thing that is a superpower and differentiates us.
Yeah. Wow. That is such a great way to put it, because like mine is this. Being on stage in front of people, you put me on stage in front of 500 people and there's this part of me that just, boom, comes alive. I don't even know what it is. I don't question it. I just go with the flow, or doing these. This is my thing. But social media, no, that is not part of my zone of genius. So I find people to support me in those areas, people where it's their zone of genius.
Exactly. And how cool would it be if all of us were operating mostly in our zone of genius? For me, my career prior to this was as an HR professional. So it was talent acquisition, talent management, and it was a zone of competence and excellence. I was good at it. Like I remember saying to my boss when I left my last corporate job, I'm going to become a coach full time. And he's like, but you're such a good recruiter. I had to really reckon with, just because I can doesn't mean that I should. Right. And, what is available when most of life is spent in that zone of genius. But it does require the humility of acknowledging I need support. I cannot do this on my own. Don't want to do it on my own.
Yeah. I mean, it would be lonely to do this on our own. Yeah. And you brought up another point, and this is something that I like to talk about, and I'm going to talk about this a lot more on future episodes. When we go to make that shift, or we do something that's out of the ordinary from the social norms, there are those around us who are like, why are you doing that? You're very good at this. Why don't you do that? Like when I wanted to do my own business and write and podcast and all that, I had some very close people. Why don't you just go work at another university? Wouldn't you feel better about yourself if you just had a real job? I'm like, I have a real job. But they don't understand, and there's friction there. But I think that the genius comes in trusting yourself and just going for whatever it is that you feel is in your heart.
This is such an important point. Almost every one of my clients at one point or another has brought these conversations that they've had with people that they really love, who are deeply concerned. You're going to leave your job, and or you're going to, take on that risk. And I always say, let's take a moment and just do some perspective taking. What might be going on for them? Those comments are more about the other person and their desire for safety. And often it's how much they love you. They want to be safe and they want you to be safe. So don't take that risk, because we can't guarantee you're going to be safe. And so with so much love, you get to say, thank you so much for your concern. This is my path. And I might fail first attempt in learning. And I'm going to continue to grow, right? That is so critically important. But knowing what is yours and what is theirs. And most of the time when people come to us with things like that, it's about them and their stuff.
Absolutely. It's funny. I had someone say to me, I'm not going to say who, he said, Randy, you talk about self-esteem. Don't you think if you had a regular job that you were going to every day, you'd have more self-esteem? Oh my God.
Yeah. Tell me more about you, right? Like that's what he's saying is like, oh, that's interesting.
I know. Yeah. I decided not to say anything back, but but that resistance comes, and the fear, when we go to do these things, yes, there's fear, and it's a normal part of the human experience. But I believe that courage is action in the face of fear, that if we wait for the fear to be over, we're never going to do it. We just have to walk through it.
There's no way around fear. There's only through it. And every time you lean into fear and do the thing anyway, you build confidence in yourself and you build courage. People say, well, aren't you scared? When I went out on my own, well, aren't you scared? I have 2 kids with special needs, big bills. Husband and I are both contributors to the family, equal contributors to the family. Aren't you fearful? Yeah. Of course. Of course I'm fearful. Is that going to stop me? No, because nothing in my life that has ever been worth it has come without some level of fear. And it's a sign that you're playing big enough. It's like, if there is no fear, if there is no stretch or challenge in this, it's not calling you forth.
The reward is not as great. The bigger the fear that you walk through, the greater the reward at the end.
And you can
Yeah.
start on a lower gradient, right? Like
Yes.
sometimes for some of my clients, the fear to lean into is the fear of saying no to something that they've always said yes to at work. And that's
Yeah.
a lower gradient fear, but
Hmm.
it has the risk of different consequences. You
Yeah.
know, bigger fears, walking away from that multi-six-figure job because your soul sucked, you know,
Yeah.
without having something else lined up, right? So yeah, I also love fear, false evidence appearing real. I
Oh
love
yeah.
these acronyms.
Oh yeah. Have you ever heard the other one for fear? F everything and run.
I love it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. So
love it.
we get to choose which one it is.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
hysterical.
But that's the process. And, there's so many people. And since I moved here to San Diego a month ago, I got involved with this thing called the San Diego Conscious Community.
Mm.
And I'm meeting a lot of energy workers and healers and people who are doing amazing things with their life that came from corporate America. They came from, the 9 to 5, the 60-hour a week work week that's supposed to be 40, and they were burning out. It's like, you know what, but I'm called to do something else.
Right.
And it's hard, but I think you're right. It takes baby steps along the way in order to get to that point. I talk about, ego to self-esteem is on a continuum, and every little step moves you to a higher sense of self-esteem.
Yeah. I love that you brought conscious up in this because so the new golden rule is to treat yourself the way you want others to treat you. And that's not to say that the golden rule is bad and wrong. It's to say that in this day and age, in this fast paced, quickly changing, pressure filled world, there has to be another way because
Yeah.
we are not taking care of ourselves. We're not prioritizing. We're actually celebrating and applauding people sacrificing themselves. And it's leading to so much unconsciousness. We're just unconsciously walking through life. And I am
Yeah.
a stand for conscious living and conscious leadership. And that comes from you knowing and taking care of you
Yes.
first.
Emily, do you know, I don't even know if you know this, because, we're friends and we just kind of, hey, you want to be on my podcast? Do you know what my podcast is called? It's Becoming Your Own BFF.
Yeah.
And my book, Becoming Your Own BFF, and this show is all about how we tend to treat ourselves like our own worst bully. And if we turn that around, I spill a glass of water on my desk and the bully says, oh my God, you're so clumsy. I can't believe you did that. The best friend is like, it's okay. It's only water. Nothing got ruined. So if we talk to ourselves like our own best friend and tap into that and intentionally, consciously start to make that shift over time, it gets easier. For me now, it took me a while to make that shift. Now the best friend voice is the one that I hear so much louder. The bully, I hear him every now and then. I'm like, what are you doing? Now get back over there.
Oh, you're still here. How cute. How cute.
It'll always be, you know what? I honor the bully. It has a purpose. It has meaning in my life. And I honor his existence because in the past, he helped protect me from some pretty scary things. But now the best friend takes over because I know I can handle anything that life throws at me.
We're so aligned. I call that piece your survival mechanism, right?
Yeah.
Your inner critic is part of your survival mechanism. It's that
Yes.
autopilot.
Yes.
It will never go away. We don't want it to. It serves a purpose. It protected us when we were young, and we want to honor it, right? And we also want to know that it's not the only way. I will say that in my years of working with leaders, though they may not recognize it initially, there's often this like, but my inner critic is like my motivator. Like if I don't have my inner critic, I'm not going to get work done, or I'm going to be lazy and sitting on the couch eating my bonbons all day.
Yeah. And I challenge them, give it a shot for 30 days.
Yeah.
Honor the critic, but tap into the best friend. What would your best friend say? You watch your productivity just launch to a new level.
I talk about my keynote speech that self-criticism and self-compassion, if we look at both of them and we say self-compassion, actually, the studies show, this is not just me speaking, you speaking, the research, the science shows that self-compassion is a far healthier and more sustaining motivator than self-criticism. Self-criticism, you will burn out. It's like willpower, you burn out. It's the same thing. And how to access it, for some, like I love how you talk about it as be your own BFF, because that's very tangible. People know how they talk to their own friend. But a lot of individuals have a hard time. Like, I get what you're saying, but I don't even know how to change that narrative. And so, you know, I always say, start with what you know, and that's what you're talking about. How do you talk to a friend?
Exactly. And what I talk about in my book and here is I separate self into 4 parts: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And what can you do today to intentionally nourish and exercise each one of the 4 parts?
So beautiful.
Taking a 10-minute break and just doing a crossword puzzle or Sudoku for 10 minutes, or stopping and actually eating lunch and having something held, not just scarf down a sandwich because it's there, but intentionally pause and allow yourself to just have lunch. So those little things make such a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it.
Yeah. You know what? I'm keep thinking we need to do a retreat together sometime.
I'm totally in for that.
That would be so much fun.
One of my passions over the past couple of years has been facilitating breath work. So I got myself certified, and I love to lead groups of people in a particular type of breath and take them on a journey inward. And so when I think of a retreat, it's like, oh, that's fun. Yoga, personal development.
Here, I'll give you a little insight. Here's my dream for how I want to do retreats. I want to do them back in Orlando. And people come in on Friday. There's a little social gathering Friday night. Saturday, all day we work. And we're doing self-esteem and leadership. And we're taking breaks to do breath work and chair yoga and stretching and different things throughout the day to teach people how these simple things that they can do to take care of themselves. Saturday night, we have a little party. And then on Sunday, we have an inner child play date at Disney's Magic Kingdom.
I'm so in.
To teach people, don't forget to play.
The fun, the joy,
That's what life is about. It's not about, I heard a saying a long time ago, no one ever sat on their deathbed saying, I wish I would have spent more time in the office.
No. And they don't say, I wish I had accrued more wealth because I can bring it with me, because you can't.
Yeah, no. And it's so important to keep playing. Yeah. And keep that joy. I mean, it's funny, I tell people I'm 64 years old and they're like, wait, what? You're 64? I'm like, yeah, but I'm still having fun. You can see my drum set over there. I play my drums. I go down to the beach. I hang out with my dog. I get on the ground and play with them. I go to movies. I go to plays. I go to concerts. I just got back from Santana. I mean, fine. Oh, it was so good. Being in San Diego, so many good concerts. Yeah, I love it. Music brings me joy, and I know that, so I fill my life with that. And it's up to the people who are watching and listening to find what is it that brings you joy, and not what other people are going to think about it. If you want to go to Comic-Con, go to Comic-Con. It doesn't matter what other people think.
Totally. It's truly undervalued in our culture, and I want to change that. Fun, joy. It's magic. It's what we are all desiring. And again, that can look different for all people, but that's part of, again, the new golden rule is knowing yourself, knowing what really excites you and alivens you.
Yeah. And go explore, go do different things and see what fits for you. Because what works for me might not work for you. What you find fun might not be fun for me. And it's like, yeah, go do yours. I'll do mine. We'll find things that we can do together. I mean, that's what friendships are. That's what relationships are. When 2 people, it's like, oh no, we have to go together. We have to do everything. Okay, if that works for you, great. But there has to be, this is me. This is my thing.
Yeah, it's a really personal experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, one of the things that I really love when you were talking about this, your book is The Golden Rule, Emily Golden. I mean, that was a no-brainer for you to do that. I
Right.
love that.
It's so funny because I was talking to someone at yoga the other day, and I had arrived in I had my golden shirt on. I have like a lot of golden colored tops, and she's like, "Oh, what a great color!" I was like, "Oh, it's my brand." And she's like, "What do you mean you have a brand?" I said, "Well, I run Golden Resources. I'm Emily Golden. It's golden. Golden is the thing." And I am so fortunate. This is the last name that I married. What's interesting, though, is that my parents always called me, not because I was their favorite, but because I have lighter hair than my sister, their golden child. So it was kind of put upon me. And yeah, I'm committed to living a golden life. And that means every area of my life.
Yes. Oh, see, that's it. And that's what we want our clients and our audience members to do for themselves. And we're examples of what happens when you get out of your own way and just allow yourself to live your joy.
Completely. I was talking to a client today who is struggling with something, and this person actually asked me to share a little bit about my journey, specifically because having an example of what is possible, truly possible, is so inspiring. And that's who you are, Randy. And that's who I am committed to being as well. It's not that I don't have all the answers. I've just done a tremendous amount of work at this point, and I am so keenly tuned into the experience I am having in my life is of my own creation. Always, always, always.
Always, and never done.
Never.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't ever want it to be done.
No, I know, right?
I want to take my last breath growing.
Exactly. Yes. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. I think I have the best job in the world. I really do. But Emily's probably saying the same thing. So thank you for joining us today, Emily, and tune in next week to hear the rest of our conversation. And until then, I hope you have an awesome week. I hope you got something out of this and practice some new things to intentionally improve the quality of your life. If we can do it, you can do it. We'll see you next week. Take care.
You've been listening to Becoming Your Own BFF with your host, Randy Haveson. Tune in every Friday at 1:30 Pacific on transformationtalkradio.com for more tools to stop being your own worst bully and start becoming your own best friend. Learn essential skills to boost self-esteem and overcome the devastating effects of ego. By focusing on physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being, you can start listening to your best friend voice rather than your inner bully voice. For more information, visit randyhaveson.com.